Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to walk through a fantastic set of notes on the human eye and the really fascinating world of light. Have you ever stopped to think about how this tiny little sphere in your head creates your entire visual world? Or why the sky is blue? Well, we're going to get into all of it. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the eye itself, how it's built and how it works. Then we'll look at what happens when vision isn't perfect. After that, we dive into the cool physics of light using prisms to understand color. And we'll wrap it all up by seeing how our own atmosphere creates some pretty incredible visual effects.
All right, first things first. Let's get to know the amazing biological camera we all have built right into our heads, the human eye. We're going to see exactly how this thing works.
So, starting with the very basics, the eye is this incredibly valuable and sensitive organ. And you know, it's surprisingly small, only about 2.3 centimeters in diameter. Think about that. It's about the size of a gumball. But this tiny little sphere is our personal window to the entire world. Now, the very first stop for any light entering your eye is the cornea. It's this clear dome on the front. And it's not just a protective window. It actually does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to focusing. The cornea handles the first and most powerful bend of light. Right behind that, you've got the lens. So, if the cornea does the big initial focus, the lens is like the fine-tuning knob. It's made of this really cool, fibrous, jelly-like material that can literally change its shape, allowing you to instantly shift focus from something close, like your phone, to something far away, like a bird in the sky. And then we have the iris. That's the colorful part of your eye, the part that makes your eyes brown or blue or green. Its main job is to act like the aperture on a camera. It's a muscle that controls exactly how much light gets to go deeper into the eye. And the way the iris does that is by changing the size of the pupil. That's the black dot right in the center. Now, the pupil isn't really a thing itself, it's actually just an opening. When it's bright out, your iris makes the pupil tiny. In the dark, it opens it up wide to let in as much light as possible. So after passing through the pupil, the light finally hits the retina. You can think of the retina as the high-definition screen at the very back of your eye. It's packed with millions of light-sensitive cells that, when light hits them, fire off electrical signals. Those signals then zip down the optic nerve straight to the brain, which does the incredible job of turning them into the images we actually see. So, what's the range on a healthy eye? Well, its far point is, believe it or not, infinity. I mean, think about it. On a clear night, you can see stars that are light years away. That's pretty incredible. Okay, but what about up close? That's called the near point. It's the closest you can get an object to your face before it starts to get blurry. For a normal eye, that's about 25 centimeters. So if you find yourself holding your book or your phone further and further away to read it, that's your near point changing. But of course, things aren't always perfect. So what happens when this amazing little system has a problem? Now we're going to look at some common vision defects, and more importantly, how we can fix them. The real secret to the eye's focusing magic is something called the power of accommodation. It's basically the lens's superpower, that ability to change its shape to adjust its focus. Almost all the common vision problems we see happen when this power gets weak or when the shape of the eyeball itself gets in the way. One really common issue, especially as people get older, is cataracts. This is when that normally clear lens starts to get milky and cloudy, kind of like trying to look through a foggy window. The good news is it's easily treated with a routine surgery where they just replace the cloudy lens with a new, artificial one. All right, let's get into the big three refractive errors: myopia, hypermetropia, and presbyopia. We're going to break down exactly what each one is, what causes it, and how it gets corrected. First up, we've got myopia. You probably know this as nearsightedness, and it's just what it sounds like. You can see things that are near you perfectly fine, but stuff far away gets all blurry. So what's going on here? Well, there are usually two main culprits. Either the lens is too curved and it's bending the light too much, or the eyeball itself is a little too long. Either way, the result is the same. The light focuses in front of the retina instead of on it. So how do you fix it? It's actually a really elegant solution. You use a concave lens. This type of lens spreads the light out just a tiny bit before it even hits your eye. This perfectly counteracts the eye's overfocusing, pushing that focal point right back onto the retina where it belongs. Next on the list is hypermetropia, also known as far-sightedness. And yep, you guessed it, it's the exact opposite problem. Distant objects look great, but trying to see things up close is a real struggle. And the causes are the exact inverse of myopia too. Either the lens isn't curved enough, so it has too long of a focal length, or the eyeball itself is a bit too short. This time, the light doesn't bend enough.
so the focus point ends up somewhere behind the retina.
And the fix, logically, is the opposite as well. You use a convex lens. This kind of lens helps the eye out by bending the light a little more, pulling that focus point forward so it lands perfectly on the retina.
And finally, there's presbyopia. This is the one that tends to happen to most of us as we get older. That flexible, jelly-like lens naturally starts to harden up over time, and it loses its ability to change shape easily. This makes it really tough to focus on anything close. The classic fix for this is bifocal lenses, which have a prescription for distance on top and one for reading on the bottom.
Okay, let's totally shift gears now. We're moving away from the biology of the eye and into the pure physics of light. And for that, we need a very important tool, the prism.
So what exactly is a prism? Well, it's really just a piece of transparent material, usually glass, that has two flat surfaces set at an angle to each other. That simple angle is the whole secret to its light-bending magic.
When a ray of light goes through a prism, it bends. If you look at the path the light was on originally, and then the new path it takes when it comes out, the angle between those two lines is what we call the angle of deviation.
All right, this is where things get really cool and colorful. Let's see what happens when we don't just shine any light, but specifically white light through a prism.
This amazing phenomenon is called dispersion. It's that effect where a prism takes a single beam of white light and splits it open into a beautiful band of all its different colors. And that band of colors, that's what we call a spectrum. And the order of those colors is always exactly the same. We remember it with that classic acronym VIBGYOR: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red.
But why does it split? Okay, this is the key. The prism bends each color of light just a little bit differently. Red light, which has a longer wavelength, gets bent the least, but violet light, with its much shorter wavelength, gets bent the most. That separation is what creates the rainbow effect.
And of course, the most famous, most beautiful example of dispersion in nature is the rainbow. After a rain shower, all those tiny water droplets still floating in the air act like millions of little prisms, all working together to split the sunlight into that giant, colorful arc across the sky.
All right, for our last section, let's scale way up. Forget about a single glass prism or a tiny water droplet. Now we're going to look at how the Earth's entire atmosphere messes with light. You know how light bends when it goes from air into water? Well, it also bends when it goes from the vacuum of space into our atmosphere. That effect, happening on a planetary scale, is called atmospheric refraction. And this causes some really famous effects. The best example is the twinkling of stars. As starlight travels down through all the shifting, turbulent layers of our atmosphere, the light path gets bent over and over again. To our eyes, this makes a star seem to shimmer and change in brightness.
So, a great question is, if stars twinkle, why don't planets? Well, it really just comes down to distance. Stars are so incredibly far away that they're basically just single points of light. Planets, on the other hand, are much closer, so they look like tiny disks. The light coming from all the different points on that disk gets averaged out by the time it reaches us, which completely cancels out the twinkling effect.
And that same atmospheric bending gives us a little bit of extra daylight every single day. The atmosphere actually bends the sun's light over the horizon. This means we see the sun for about 2 minutes before it physically clears the horizon and for another 2 minutes after it has already set. Pretty cool, right? Okay, and finally, let's talk about the scattering of light. This is what happens when sunlight hits all the tiny particles in our atmosphere, like molecules of gas or little specks of dust, and gets bounced around in every possible direction. And here it is, the one rule that explains so much of what we see. The intensity of scattered light is inversely proportional to the fourth power of its wavelength. Now, what does that mean in simple terms? It means that short wavelengths of light get scattered way more easily than long wavelengths.
So let's put it all together. We know that shorter wavelengths, like blue and violet light, get scattered all over the place by the atmosphere. And we know that longer wavelengths, like red and orange, tend to travel in a more direct line to our eyes. So with that in mind, what is the single biggest, most obvious, everyday phenomenon that this simple rule of physics perfectly explains?